Hey team, how's it going? Welcome to Combat Ready HQ. Welcome to today's video where we will be discussing the differences between the regular and reserves, the pros, the cons, what should you do, because it will suit different people and their lifestyle. I'm Craig. I spent 16 years in the British Army serving the Royal Artillery, that's 7th Parachute Regiment Royal Horse Artillery in Colchester, and around 5 years in the Household Cavalry Regiment in Windsor and Bulford. Part of the reserves now, but I haven't actually attended just because I've been getting on with life. I've been out of the army since 2022. But that is one of the good things about the reserves, is the part-time, is the availability. You shouldn't be like me, but you should try and attend if you can. But let's talk about it. So first of all, that's what the reserves is. It is part-time in the nicest possible way. They used to be called the Territorial Army, the TA. Now people get upset if you call them TA. I've always known them as a TA, but they're called the reserves. And then you have the regulars, which is your full-time. So starting with pay then, that means regular, you get a full-time pay employment. You are fully employed. Starting at around 16 to 18,000 in training and working all the way up to around 50,000 if you make it to Warrant Officer Class 1, and even more if you commission, starting at around 30,000 if you go in at officer, and going all the way up to around six figures if you make it to general. So it's a full-time salary, but reserves isn't. It's supplemented pay, really. You need a second job if you want to live sort of comfortably, or even live, because if you do a drill night in the week, it's a quarter day pay, because you're only doing 2 hours. You only get a quarter of day pay. So whether you start as a private, go in at a Lance Corporal, if you've left the regulars, going into the reserves, you're only going to get a quarter day's pay on a drill night. If you go away and do a weekend, you're going to get your full day's pay. So if you're away full day Saturday, Sunday, you'll get a full day's pay for those 2 days. And then say if you do your 2 week sort of annual camp, battle camp, to keep yourself in date, you're then going to get paid a full day's pay for all of that. But just be aware as well, reserves don't get the X factor pay that the regulars do. It's a little bit more for doing sort of more of like a serious job and being a full-time soldier. You get your sort of your rank pay, and then there's X factor pay for regulars. So for a reserve, you could most probably only be looking at 15 to 20 quid for the evening work you've done, that quarter day's pay. You do 4 of them over a month, you're only going to be looking at around £80. And then if you do a weekend, chucking another £100, £200. But then remember, if you've got a full-time job, you've got to take off tax and national insurance deductions as well, because it is classed as an income. So don't look at it as a big money earner unless you're going to be sort of working with a more serious role, such as 2123 SAS, or you're going to be fully involved in the reserves and you're going to be volunteering for everything because you've got the time, because you're maybe self-employed or your job allows you to get away more. But if you've got a job that's quite 9 till 5 and you can't get away all the time, don't look at it for the pay. Go to the army if you want sort of the army for the pay, but that's not why you should be joining the army anyway. But that's the difference here. Army full-time pay, reserves is just a little bit of pocket money, bit of extra cash, and obviously if you go away long-term on exercise or ops, then you do obviously get a lot more pay, so it will make up for it there. And then sort of the big money you get, as long as you complete all your mats in your days, you will get a bounty, a little bonus at the end of each tax year, starting at around £500 to £600 work and all the way up to around £1,800 per year. But depending on how long you've served in the reserves, it will depend on where you start at with your bonus, and then it increases. To do that, you have to complete all sort of your basic training and tests throughout that tax year period, and you have to do your minimum sort of requirements, which is sort of, for a reserve, normally they expect you to do around 28 days minimum to hit that minimum mark. If you're coming from regular reserve, you can get away, I think, with doing a minimum of 19 or 21 days. So it's not that many days actually throughout the year that you need to do to hit that target, and the basic level of training is really easy to hit. They're not hard tests. So that is that. Moving on to the second point then, which is training, capability, professionalism. Right, this may trigger a few people, but don't get too upset because you're not full-time. From my experience and from talking to quite a few other people who've served in the reserves, obviously the standards just isn't up there with the regulars. Don't get me wrong, there are some low standards in the British Army, but you'll go to a drill night and just kits, boots, equipment isn't ironed correctly, polished. They just look a bit of a mess. And even if you go to sort of a higher end unit as well, I've heard it as well. I'm not going to mention names, but I've heard it as well. You go to a higher end unit, it's meant to be a little bit more professionalism, higher standard. They're still not as high because what you've got to think is it's your second job. You're not a full-time regular soldier doing it day in, day out. So your standards are not going to be as high. So don't expect to rock up to reserves and you're going to have these highly drilled, highly professional, self-disciplined, really well ironed, highly polished boots every drill night. It's not going to happen. People are going to look a mess. When it comes to sort of webbing, there's going to be all over the place. Kit packing is going to be all over the place. Weapon handling, skillet arms, fieldcraft, tactical sort of drills are just not going to be up there with the majority of the regular British Army. But I will say, when they go away on ops and they start sort of PDT, they go over to the regular units, they do get that full-time training and they do come up to standard. So if you go to the reserves and you've got someone who's been in the reserves quite a while, done a few sort of long overseas exercises or deployments, they actually are up to that standard. Those ones where it's more of a hobby, they sort of just turn up here and there, never been in the regulars, their standard is a lot lower. So don't expect this really high standard because you will be disappointed. But it is the reserves. Like I said, it's not their full-time job. Opportunities though, I will have to say, the reserves get just as good opportunities as the regulars. Whether that's exercise opportunities, deployment opportunities, adventure training opportunities, it is there and it's up for grabs. The regulars are always being backfilled by reserves, whether they're going Kenya, Oman, used to be Canada. Kenya's a big one. When I went twice, with Para-Reg were always backfilled by 4 parallels, loads of them. We had HAC come with us quite a bit. So it's there. If you want to get away on good overseas exercises or like decent exercises in the UK, the opportunity is there. Volunteer for them if you really want to. Adventure training, I swear the reserve get more money and more opportunity thrown at them for adventure training than I did in regulars in my last few years. When I first joined regulars, there was loads of adventure training. Towards the end, it pretty much died off. But you're always hearing stories of the reserves getting it. So there is opportunity there for any sort of adventure training, skiing, parachuting, coastal steering, all your sort of water sort of stuff, heading over to Wales for hiking, whatever it is. There's always opportunity for adventure training, overseas exercises. So opportunities are definitely there for you and up for grabs. Another perk to obviously being in the reserves is freedom. Like I said, it's a voluntary role. You've chosen to be there. So it's up to you whether you turn up for a drill night. They like you to attend as many as possible. Same when it comes to exercises, annual sort of camps, weekends away. But you're not actually tied in. You've got your minimum requirements to hit to basically get your bonus. You don't hit them, then you don't hit them. If you don't attend for too long, yes, they will remove you. But if you miss a weekend, you miss a drill night, it's your choice. It's not like the regulars where they're like, you're going on exercise in 2 weeks for 4 weeks, or you're going on exercise in 2 days, you're going to go and do this course in 2 days, cancel whatever plans you've got, you're going. The reserves is, do you want to go and do this? Do you want to go and do this? Have you got time to go and do this? And you just say yes or no. So you've got freedom of choice, freedom of your own time. If you want to go on an overseas exercises in the space and they're asking you, then it's up to you whether you want to go. So that's obviously another perk. Obviously fitness is a big one. So the regulars obviously train regularly. They get out tabbing pretty much every Friday. You've got some sort of arduous CO's PT, and then Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, there's normally some other PT with sports afternoon, Wednesday. Reserves, you're obviously only going to do 1 or 2 drill nights a week, and then maybe an odd weekend. So fitness is up to you. So you need to be dedicated, self-disciplined and motivated to keep yourself fit. In my personal opinion, if you're volunteering reserves to be a soldier, to fight for this country and to have that skill to be called up at any time, you need to maintain that level of fitness that is required of a soldier. You still need to complete your fitness test if you want to get your bonus at the end of the year. It's one of the basic fitness requirements. So it's majority up to you to keep yourself fit and get up to that. So you can't go complaining when you don't pass or you're struggling, because it's down to you. Really down to you as a regular soldier anyway. Yes, you've got more opportunity of doing PT to keep you motivated and keep you disciplined, but it's down to you as a soldier. You're signing up as a reserve soldier, so you meet the requirements every year. So make sure you're self-disciplined and self-motivated to do that. And then the last few points is you obviously don't get the perks that a regular normally does. So you're not going to get the married quarters. You're not going to get the free dental, free medical, unless you're on sort of deployment or work. So unless you're in sort of basic training, exercise, and you're sort of being paid by the army, you then get access to the medical treatment. But once once you're out, you don't. So if I injure myself as a regular, I'll just go to the medical centre the next morning and I'll be seen by sort of military doctors and go through that process. As a reserve, it's all civilianised. You don't get the sort of the free prescriptions, the free dental that you do in the regulars. Obviously, you can't go living in the block on a regular basis as you do as a regular soldier, and you don't get married quarters. So they're all the perks of the regular army. But if you go on any sort of deployments, anything that the regulars do, you do get your medals for deploying. When it comes to sort of jubilees and coronation, normally you have to hit the requirements exactly the same as the regulars. So you have to be in for a minimum. Say most jubilees and coronations recently have been 5 years. So for those consecutive 5 years, make sure you've hit your basic fitness requirements, all your basic sort of tests, you've done your minimum days, and you are ticked off at the end of every April, every tax year, if you want to get your medals. Don't go missing 1 year and then go in to complain. Unlike the regulars, you are just in for 5 years. Reserves, you got to do it consecutively every year to get those. So quite a few more perks with regulars, but with the reserves, it's more about freedom, time, and having that fun and opportunity, because it is very fun. Go away, be a soldier, go away, venture training, overseas exercise deployments under your own time, under your own choice, but you don't get the obviously full-time pay, you don't get the medical treatments and the regular sort of adventure training exercises that happen constantly. You know, you're going on exercises quite regularly throughout the year. As a regular, with reserve, you may only go once or twice. But when it comes to pay, you might have a high paying civilian job, so the money might not actually be up to you. So think about all the points, weigh up what you think's best for you. Do you want to be tied down to the army and be a soldier, shoot things, blow things up all the time, but obviously be constricted to the army pretty much tell you what to do? Or do you want to have more of a freedom and just do it here and there? Let us know what your thoughts are. If you have any questions, head over to Combat Ready HQ on Instagram. Join our free Discord. Happy to answer any questions. As always, check out our coffee and merch in the website link below. And I will see you soon.